Hello, and welcome to The Usefulati, the show that turns the writing of the world's most useful people into audio episodes you can listen to on your drive to work. Today, we have a blog from Casey Handmer, the founder and CEO of Terraform Industries, a startup that's turning water and air into carbon-neutral natural gas with solar power. See the description for more, and let's jump in.
A quick note with some self-reflection on the eve of my 37th year and after nearly 3 years of running a hardware startup. I never saw myself as a founder. At some point a few years ago, I realized nearly all my friends were founders or managers of their own business, but I saw myself as an inventor, an engineer, a scientist, a father, and a husband. Founding companies is scary and in some ways, dirty, difficult, dangerous work. The earliest germ of Terraform was something like a public benefit laboratory, intended to develop technology and open source it, rather than take the necessary step of creating an engine of value. Gradually, various pieces clicked into place and, to cut a long story short, I realized that Delaware C corporations exist for a reason. Most of the world's most challenging problems require some specialization and more than 2 hands, and it's easiest to build a team if you can run payroll, at which point you're a founder. Congratulations! I knew founding Terraform would be a challenge. A grave responsibility. An open-ended quest. But I had no idea what it would be like. Very few films and books accurately portray anything like the founder's journey. It's varied and individual in any case. It cannot be described, you have to see it with your own eyes. What I intend to describe here are some unexpected changes I have noticed in my life, outlook, and general cognition. It is not a surprise that changes occurred. Using your brain for new things helps it grow, but the specifics are interesting, at least to me. I know some of these changes have been observed in other founders, with whom I now form an unexpectedly close bond. Founders can pick founders from across a room. Fear. I have always been relatively pragmatic and detail-oriented when it comes to risk. I have done scuba diving, skydiving, technical mountaineering, and hold a private pilot license. I have climbed erupting volcanoes and hitchhiked across Siberia. But at some point in the last few years, my relationship with fear changed totally. I'm not sure if my amygdala has just been pulverized by the constant, albeit varied stresses associated with running a company, as Alex Honnold alluded to in Free Solo, but a couple of months ago I was scrambling in the Alps on some heinous Via Ferrata, sections of slippery Class 4, in the rain, with storms rolling in, and at no point did adrenaline arrive. At no point did I feel physically insecure, just physically unfit. I still get adrenaline rushes on occasion, usually associated with interpersonal issues, such as having a difficult performance management meeting with a report or asking an employee to find employment elsewhere. But aside from my heart rate ticking up, few external signs seem to change. I don't play poker, but I would guess my game would have improved if I did. Self-awareness. As alluded to in this post, there is nothing like the responsibility and authority of running a company for finally hammering home why things might not have gone so well in the past. It's like the point of view gun from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's not optional either. The hard part is once you recognize a mistaken behavior pattern you formerly used, you see it everywhere and see the harm it does. To give one example, I've had the privilege of working with many smart and talented people over my career. It is vanishingly rare to see failure occur because of a skill issue. Any degreed engineer or mathematician can, with enough persistence, solve any technical problem. And yet people fail all the time. Why? It's a will issue. Will is a kind of skill. People somehow decide that they won't do whatever relatively trivial thing, usually a minor adjustment of attitude, is required to succeed. This blows my mind. It takes years to master some engineering discipline and about 2 minutes to sip a coffee and strengthen your resolve to prevail over some issue no matter what. And yet, the resolve is apparently the hard part. I now understand why some recruiters strongly weight performance in elite sports, which is impossible to fake. Hair went grey. Unsure if this is age, children, or stress, but I've noticed quite a few fellow founders grey in proportion to payroll. 17 employees, 17 homes depend on the wisdom of my decisions to earn their daily bread. Better not mess it up. praxis of existential optimism. Voting with your feet to ditch the well-worn path and try something bold and risky, something that can only succeed through persistence and luck, creates an internal tension that can only be resolved through the adoption of optimism, at least over the long term. Short-term paranoia and pessimism are still warranted. Plenty of things are trying to kill your company. The unity of building a thing you believe in appeals strongly to me. Consecration of hard deeds. Not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Not everyone buys into this mindset, but I've always believed it's best to operate at the very limits of your ability. Few things have been as challenging to me, on every level, as running a company whose purpose is also to do something crazy hard. But I wouldn't quit a comfortable NASA job to work on some unworthy nonsense. I've always thought there was something noble about seeking a borderline impossible challenge even in the event of failure, and now I get to live it. Sublimation of mortality obstinacy. Kind of the same thing, but I am deeply frustrated by the limitations of my mortal meat robot, and I sublimate my obstinacy in the face of the inevitability of total annihilation by essentially unlimited quantities of time by building cool stuff. It is not necessary to hope in order to act, nor to succeed in order to persevere. William of Orange. Psychotic levels of determination, persistence, tenacity. I am lucky to have only ever experienced hunger voluntarily, but it focuses the attention and seems to have activated some kind of primordial switch to eat or oblivion. The startup gives a socially acceptable outlet for turning determination up to 11, and it is rewarding to see the shape of the world bend in response to concerted effort. Burdened by an unspeakable desire to coerce atoms. Despite, or perhaps because of, my 15 years of experience working mostly with software, I ended up building a hardware-focused company. We're about 17 people and none of them are software engineers, and thus it shall remain for as long as possible. There is something beautiful about taking the software mindset, infinite instant free copies of the thing, and porting it over into hardware, where every single atom needs to be wrenched from rock and persuaded to stay put. And yet, our bodies live in a physical world, constituted mostly from carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and hydrogen that came from the sky and ultimately from the core of a dying star. If we want to improve the lives of our fellow humans, with atoms we must contend. Applied Stoicism. A wise mentor once summarized Stoicism to me as the wisdom to distinguish between things I can change and the things I cannot, and the peace to accept that. I can see the value of avoiding getting upset by stuff that can't change. But Stoicism invites us to practice accepting injustice and stupidity, because these things are large problems that are approximately unchangeable. Indeed, if you're upset by something, it's easier to become nihilist and decide to be okay with it, ignore it, whatever, than it is to accept responsibility for internal agency and go out and fight it. I may still be mostly stoic, but I have changed my view of what is changeable in the world, particularly when viewed through the engine of capitalism. If something sucks, who will pay me to fix it? What can't we change? We are as gods. We can cure mortality and mine the stars. Ask me anything. I alluded to this draft on X and got a bunch of questions. These are less introspective, but this is as good a place as any to provide some answers. The usual caveats apply. I'm not a total neophyte anymore, but there's a long way to go. It took a fair bit of talking myself into it. I waited too long. And almost none of the research I did first was something I couldn't have done full-time after the fact. Still learning about capitalism. There's something zen about it. Either you generate surplus value and deliver it to a customer, or you don't. Easier than expected, too soon to tell. Recruit and judge talent. I prefer to focus on relatively unfakeable evidence of the attributes I'm looking for, which often is just a well-documented track record of having succeeded at similar tasks. Have to get down to brass tacks. There is plenty of media talking about leadership, most of it doesn't transfer until after the fact. Then it makes sense. Interrogate reality, scientific method, skepticism, read widely and think deeply about the universe. Risk tolerance, it helps to have a financial cushion and confidence that you will never be 100% unemployable. I think once you think from first principles, the value opportunities are fairly obvious. Execution strategy is less clear but can still be discovered experimentally. There is no way to know in advance if you have what it takes, you just have to try. But successful leaders come from all walks of life and work in many different styles. Co-founderships should not be handed out lightly, or really at all unless under duress. Only if the company will fail without that person. I expected to not enjoy entrepreneurship in the type 1 fun sense, but there are more important things in life than maximizing hedonic utility every second. It has turned out to be more fun than I expected. There is no limit to the quantity of skepticism, paranoia, and pessimism you must brutally apply to your own ideas, particularly your favorite ones. The market will be harsher. Good question. We need to keep the revision cycle as quick as possible, through whatever means we have available. The founder's job is to build the team, set direction, and not run out of money. All three jobs are sales. You need to listen, understand, and then show how your dreams can intersect. Fortunately, have not had to deal with this. We avoid hiring jerks. Occasionally a coaching conversation on your job is to achieve success in your project, and your ego helps to a certain point, but only to that point can help recalibrate. Unfortunately, in my limited experience, sustained performance issues are usually due to issues that remain invisible to otherwise smart and skilled workers. See my above note on the point of view gun. There's no limit to what you can achieve if you surrender credit for ideas. Ideas are cheap. Execution is what matters. Depends who you want to spend time with and how frequently you want contact with reality. For me, I did academia and then startup. I don't have good insight into the counterfactual. Over time I have calibrated and gained confidence in my intuition. I don't have much experience with software as a service. A huge fraction of the problems can simply be solved with time and/or money. Just grind through the standard process. It's only really worth the effort to sweat on problems that are near the frontier of cost and time. The rest will take care of itself. I noodled a bit on schedule, but no plan survives first contact with the enemy. In retrospect, I feel like we've moved achingly slowly, but from the outside, we've crushed a whole series of problems that the rest of the industry regards as impossible. Still, there's no partial credit. Formulating an idea that's compelling enough to raise investment off has been tough. But generally, I think I've been extremely lucky across the board. The universe seems to want this technology to exist. Recommendations and track record help, but ultimately they have to look me in the eye and convince me they have insights that I do not, and that is not super common. A combination of carrot and stick. Reward top performers both directly and by routinely deleting underperformers who slow everyone down and destroy morale. Firing turned out to be much more necessary than I at first hoped. Felt slow on the inside, to be honest. I thought it was the most important. Definitely top 3, and the one I was best qualified to address. The other two are immortality and solar radiation management. Hiring, leading, fundraising are always a slog. You can always hire better, raise more, etc., etc. It has gotten easier as we've accumulated a track record of success, and I've gotten more experience. That said, it's still a thankless and soul-destroying exercise. Internet visibility helps a lot. I don't think it would have been possible to raise without having so many relatively wealthy fans of my blog. Blogs are underrated. Right one. Internalizing agency and responsibility, practicing curiosity, getting to the core issue, seeing the scope of true excellence and scaling that as quickly as possible. My screening interview questions are usually variations on what are your career goals? What are you good at? What are you not so good at? You'll never guess which question stumps the most otherwise promising candidates. It's hard to find people who are creative specialists in multiple disciplines. Focus on the questions and risks that actually matter. It's common to spend most time litigating borderline cases that barely matter at all. I have never seriously considered starting a software company. There are lots of neat software products that I wish existed, but I don't think personally building a company around them is the right approach.